Hey everybody, welcome to the Better, Bolder, Braver marketing journey. This is chapter 1, mindset. So thank you for joining us. If you are new to Better, Bolder, Braver, then I'm Francis and I'm joined by Francis. And what we are going to be doing today is going through this chapter, mindset. We're also going to be going just touching on the other steps, the other chapters in the marketing journey, just to give you an overview of what we're going to be explaining and what is coming up down the road. So we posed a quick question in the chat, thinking about your mindset this morning. How are you feeling? So do drop that in there if you haven't already. And we're just going to wait for a couple more people to join because we have started incredibly punctually today. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here on time. Yes. So I think probably what we'll do is... oh, excellent. Mark Stedman has jumped straight on. Look, only seeing the messages 30 seconds before it was about to start. Thank you for joining straight away, Mark. We've got Sal feeling very focused. Reb is feeling energised, like Lucy's also energised. Pleasure meditation is also feeling nice and relaxed. Very good. What a wonderful way to start a Monday. Yeah, Rachel's on the post-holiday slow. Fair enough. Glide on into the week.
Feeling that, yeah. Post-holiday slow. Yeah. Post-holiday slow / slightly anxious because of the backlog that is post-holiday life. Kind of blissfully unaware post-holiday. Yeah. Thank you all for joining us this morning.
Excellent.
Simon.
So today we are going to be starting with chapter 1, which is mindset. But there are in fact 6 chapters to the marketing journey. So we've been working on this marketing journey for quite a while now, and it stems from our combined almost 40 years of marketing experience. And essentially what we've done is worked out the sort of 6 essential pillars or steps that you need to kind of get sorted in order to get your marketing working. But we're not just here to talk to you about building, massive lists of followers, making a complete hamster wheel of content and churning out nonsense in order to sort of 10x your income or build an enormous business. This is very much focused on how you as a coach can start to have more authentic conversations with your clients and how you can essentially open up a dialogue between you and the prospective clients rather than it feeling like sales or feeling too pushy. This is all about how you can build a more authentic business that serves you and your clients. So the 6 steps that we cover off are mindset, number 1. So in this chapter, what we are considering is the value and the impact. We also think about how to avoid the comparison trap. And essentially the reason we start with mindset rather than getting straight into the how is because if you don't start with the mindset, then all of the rest of it is A, really hard to do, and B, doesn't really serve much because you don't know where you're going. It gives you a sense of direction. We then move on to client. That's chapter number 2. So in client, what we're actually trying to define is, well, who is your ideal client? So who would you like to work with? Because after all, if we're going to be doing some marketing, we're going to be putting some messages out there, we may as well attract clients who we actually want to work with. We also work on finding your niche and also trying to get over some of those feelings of some commitment and also a little bit of imposter syndrome there as well. Chapter 3, is story. So in this section, what we're doing is we're trying to work out how you can tell your ideal client what you do, why you do it, and how it best serves them in the form of a story. And this makes it all very much feel less like sales and more like a conversation that you would have in person. Stage number 4 is product, and this is where we help you work on how you structure what you actually deliver to your clients into something that crucially is something that works for you, so it delivers around what you set up in your mindset, but also it's actually something that your client wants to buy. And we work through how you go about talking about those values and communicating that to your ideal client. Then we move on to chapter 5, which is all about content, and this is where we help you make meaningful content that helps you express your feelings, your value and your impact, and also engages your ideal client. And then the final chapter of the journey is journey. And what we do in journey is we map out not only your journey, so how you're going to get from where you are now to where you want to be, but we also map out a client journey so you can be clear on how you're going to get your clients to go from strangers, i.e. not knowing anything about you, to becoming those ideal clients if it's the right fit for them and you. So that was a whirlwind tour of the 6 chapters we're going to be working through. But today's session is all about mindset. So Francis, do you want to sort of give us a bit of an intro into sort of your thoughts around why it's important to start with mindset?
Thank you. Yeah, well, I think just to say, I love how clear you are on things that we've been working on for a while. I always find when I listen to you, it's very helpful, because sometimes I think when you've been thinking about something so much, to be able to then pull it right back to kind of headlines is kind of what we're inviting everybody to get to a place of comfort around. And I can certainly put my hands up and say I sometimes find it not as easy as Simon makes it look to condense a huge amount of thinking, very complex thinking, in terms of kind of technicalities and theory and tactics, and a lot of emotional stuff into something which Simon manages to articulate so succinctly. So I'm always really amazed whenever Simon does that, and that's why I think we work well together, because what Simon can do I sometimes can't do so well. And in fact, we're going to be talking a bit about limitations in this session. When I was just listening to you now, I was thinking about how similar the kind of mindset conversation is to the one about niching. And it's that thing of, I don't want to go there, the dreaded niching word. And it's sort of like, I don't want to go to the mindset place first. Why would I want to do that? And we've created kind of a 2-week sort of buffer period where, we sort of feel that people need that time at least to be considering their mindset. It's quite a big one. And we know that this kind of conversation can throw up some quite existential thoughts. When we ask people to think about what their value is, it's really complicated. And I'm going to break value down shortly, because it's a really interesting word. There's, what does value mean to you in terms of, like, what does the actual word mean to you? And then there's the question of what your value is to other people. And I think when we go down that road, it can become quite difficult to really do a good job of kind of truthfully analysing what that means in order to kind of move forward in your marketing and put yourself out there. So, as I say, there's quite a lot of thought that's gone into our 6-stage kind of process. But in this particular session, it's we can go quite deep. So we really, really welcome conversation in the chat. If people have got any specific thoughts or questions, do please post away, because we very much see this as kind of one of the more interactive opportunities. You guys being coaches on the whole, as in most of you I'm assuming are sort of coaches or mentors, do a lot of thinking about mindset. And in fact, one of the questions which I would like for people to kind of think about off the bat is, when you hear the word mindset, do you think about your own mindset, or do you think about your client's mindset? Because what we're talking about at this stage is your mindset, our mindset. I think we do a lot of thinking as coaches and as mentors and as sort of guide people about what it is that we want to be saying about other people, about their mindset. And, we need to, I think, reflect back on ourselves about where we're coming from when we say that. So, yeah, do feel free to kind of be involved in this conversation. I wanted to, before I go on any more, Simon. I was going to just go into our kind of conversations about value and limitations, but I wondered if anything was coming up for you right now that you wanted to say.
Well, I think I just wanted to sort of share. I mean, one of the things I've been doing for many years is sort of taking that coaching approach of maybe asking the question that's a slightly uncomfortable question to ask, but you know it's an important one to bring up in a set order. And there's a reason we go straight into mindset in chapter number 1, and it is because it's kind of what no one else is doing in the world of marketing training. They're just sort of giving you all the tactics and the sort of here's a whole list of how to's and guides, and it's like, well, that's great, but ultimately, unless your mindset, unless you're invested in it, unless you're sort of in that journey and you set yourself up with the right mindset, then the rest of it is really difficult and often feels like a lot of work. Whereas what I've found through coaching people on accelerators and through previous training courses is that actually if you can get the mindset right, and it gives you so much energy and enthusiasm to take into the rest of the work, because marketing your business, especially if maybe you haven't been doing much marketing, to get up to a sort of consistent level of, you know, rolling marketing that feels good and authentic, and, you know, it does take some work, it takes energy, it takes thinking, and unless you've got your mindset thought out and a sort of destination in mind, you know, unless you've got that journey in your mind ready, then it can feel like a big hurdle just to get over that. And I think a lot of people avoid thinking about it when they're doing training because they kind of feel like it's a bit fragile to handle and they're not ready to go there. But the way we're doing that is just, you know, being upfront and open and saying, okay, we know this is big, we know this is some big questions for you, but we know this is important, and we've seen that when people do embrace this process, they embrace their own reflection and building their own sort of mindset. Trying to think of the word I'm looking for. Not a goal, but like a mindset sort of outlook. The next stages are so much easier, because when we say, okay, I want you to write a story, think about some content, build a product that serves you and your client, all of that takes work. But if you know, well, actually, yeah, I understand, I'm energized by my outlook, then it's a lot easier than if it's like, yeah, but I don't really know, why am I doing this? Why do I have to keep making blogs and podcasts, and why do I have to do this? That's often the question I get when people's mindset isn't ready, is that, but why? Whereas if it's, oh, well, I can see why, because I need to have an authentic conversation with this person, and that conversation can't be one way. It has to be, you know, I get it. You know, it sort of helps motivate from there on in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And you've reminded me to say that, you know, as with everything, there's the way in which marketing can serve us is that it reminds us that, first of all, it's a good opportunity for us to be able to reflect back on ourselves and our values. But it's also an opportunity to have fun and be creative. So the clearer we are on why we're doing something, the safer we feel, the more we feel that we're working within a framework of purpose. And so the more creative we can be, because we know that what we're doing is play within a safe place, like a child. You know, it's kind of, we know it's okay to kind of push the boundary slightly, because it's all working towards something that resonates or aligns with our values. And so, yeah, I mean, on the values side, I've thought a lot about this over the last few months. And the reason I find the word value very interesting as a way to kind of start off a conversation about mindset is because I think you can kind of look at it in a number of ways. And if I ask people here sort of what attributing value means to you, I'm interested in what people sort of think about. You know, for me, when I attribute value to something, I am putting into practice, you know, a sort of way that sort of puts in front and centre the things that I think are valuable. So it informs my practice. And when I attribute value, I also put in place sort of processes that dictate what I'm doing. Value for some people is obviously about worth, so we understand sort of value on the basis of the worth of something. And when we put a value on something, we're also kind of emphasizing it something. And I probably not explaining so clearly the kind of nuances that I feel kind of sit around the word to value, the phrase to value. So what I've done to try to kind of help explain myself better is sort of think about how values influence our behaviour. So I think when we start, well, I think we all assume that we have a similar value set, but actually, if we're invited to think about what our real values are, then we can start seeing that we're all quite different. And I think when we think about what our values are, it starts helping us to think about how we practice differently from other coaches, for example, or how we practice marketing differently from other people. And that leads us onto what we call avoiding the comparison trap, which is to sort of see ourselves as being exactly the same as other people. So the mindset exercise that we want people to kind of move through is getting clearer on what our own sort of value set is, in order that we can avoid the comparison trap, so that we can kind of own our own very personal approach to coaching or anything else, and therefore we can own our own personal approach to putting ourselves out there. So the other thing that I want to kind of bring up at this point is that I think it's really important also when you're working on the mindset that you're going to have to move forward in your marketing. I think it's really important for us to kind of address the elephant in the room, which is our limits. And I like the idea of sort of owning our limits first and foremost to ourselves, and therefore kind of just letting go of things that we know are not for us or that we're not particularly good at, and then also being able to talk about those limits openly and sort of celebrating them in a way that allows us to then sort of shout about that, well, not shout about, but sort of be proud of the things that we are good at. And as British people, or generally humans, we don't tend to want to shout about things that we're amazing at. It's not really particularly natural. But I think if we first talked about what our limits are, it makes it a lot easier to then talk about what we are good at. So I think the sort of values and limits piece is so important in being able to kind of really work out what our mindset is, before we kind of get any further down the marketing road. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I think a lot of that work doesn't on the face of it appear to be related to marketing, in the sense that I think some people look at it and go, why do I need to start with that? Why do I need to think about this? How does this possibly affect my marketing? But I think you touched on a really interesting point there of, ultimately, if you just define yourself and your value of, well, I'm a coach and I do coaching sessions, then ultimately there's nothing different to you or from any other coach, if that's as deep as you ever get with it. Whereas when you actually start to understand your value a little bit, and then by extension your impact, you then have something you can talk about which makes you different to every other coach, regardless of if you've both, you could have sat next to each other on the same training course for months and months, and you could be operating in the same city, the same town, doing the same thing. You could have known each other for 10 years and be ultimately almost two peas in a pod. But ultimately your value and your impact means that you're two completely different coaches who will appeal to two completely different sets of people. And you've got something of real difference. But that difference is what makes you attractive to your ideal client. So, but also I think there's a lot of work there. Not, even if you were to just do exercise 1 of mindset and stop, I think you'd change the way you ran your business. You change the way you explained what you do to your friends and family, even, let alone your clients, purely by just taking some time to think, well, hang on a minute, what is it that what is it that energizes me, that lifts me up, that I deliver through my work, through my day-to-day life. You know, there's so much to everybody. Like, everybody's story is different as well. You know, not to get too much into the future modules of it, but like, no one else has your story. So even just starting to think about it and just take that step back, I think can really give you a lot. Even if you then don't do anything else with it, just that, I think, would be a worthwhile exercise to go through.
It's so amazing. I'm seeing the chat. It's very difficult to talk about some of this stuff, but I'm really feeling very energized by the chat, because I'm sensing from what people are saying that they're totally kind of getting the kind of complicated nuances. For example, Joanna has, the recent comment in the chat is value and values feel very semantically different, but come together to point to our uniqueness, and that's a much neater way. Thank you, Joanna, of kind of sort of articulating sort of what I was saying earlier, because I think we talk about value, don't we? And it's sort of like value, just chuck that word out there. But yeah, your value to your client and your own values are very, very sort of intertwined. So it's one thing sort of saying, here are my values: generosity, playfulness, blah, blah, blah. They're my values, the environment, whatever. And then what is my value? It's like, well, how can we have a conversation where we're understanding that the value that you are serving is related to how you talk about your values. So it's not to say if you value the environment, then you're going to have a bigger value on people's lives. It's the value that you can have to a client, if you've found the right client, because you've embraced niching, is very can be very harmoniously closely related to the way in which you talk about your own values. So Lucy says, Reb says, helps me understand who I am, helps direct me. Yeah, so what we're talking about is simply something that we hope will be all about helping to direct you. We're not.
Yeah, I really feel that, Reb. That's really cool. I think that's pretty much bang on, isn't it? That's a really nice way of looking at it. I think the helps direct me is interesting. Yeah. So one thing I just wanted to quickly loop back to was when you were saying about your limits, because I obviously spoke a lot there just about values, but I think it's interesting picking up on, about what you can do. I can do. But actually, one thing I think is really important in marketing and just in general life is to know what your limits are. And your limits are, do you know what? I can't serve this person. I can't work with this person. I can't work with, people who believe this or people who are on this wavelength. We're just not going to get on. There may be other coaches out there who that's exactly who they're looking for. And I think you can save yourself a lot of time and energy by not trying to convert those people to your way of thinking, not trying to have conversations where you're just trying to persuade them that they, or not persuade, but just even just having a conversation with them may drain a lot of energy from you. But actually, by putting out there that you're like, do you know what? If you're thinking like this, it's not going to be a good fit. Or actually, I work with people like this, and that will naturally signal to the people who aren't that it's the wrong conversation to have. And I think when you start to think of it like that, as your value is like, well, this is, it's like a lighthouse, isn't it? Just clearly showing like, this is where I want to be. But actually, it's also showing where you don't want to go. It's like, it's warning people, don't come over here if this isn't for you. But it's also helping guide the people who it is for you to like, come over here, we've got a spotlight, come on. I think the values work in those two ways. So your limits, obviously you can have limits both, personally. But even if your limit is, for example, well, I don't work past 3 p.m. because I have to look after my kids and pick them up from school and do bath and bedtime or whatever. That could be a limit that actually means that for some people you can't work together because they can only work after 3 p.m. So even that limit is good to establish really early on, because if you then go through a whole load of marketing messaging, making a product, you spend a lot of time and effort putting it all out there as marketing, and then everybody who comes to you wants to work with you after 3 p.m. You know what I mean? You've put a lot of energy into something that isn't going to fit. Whereas if you established your mindset limit really early on and said, this is a no-go for me, past this it's not going to work, you can build that into everything you create, and it just saves you so much time and energy. I think is the crucial one.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, I'll mention at this point something that I came up with not too long ago, which is what I'm calling a limits compass. So the four kind of things that I like to kind of think about what my limits are, the four pots that I like to kind of think about what my limits would be put into are practical, emotional, time, and interest limits. So, as you're saying, there are sort of practical, there are practical limitations that we have. And for me, I kind of put sort of things that I'm not particularly good at, the practical things that I'm not particularly good at, such as, let's say, like all the tech stuff that you're brilliant at. Simon is the one that kind of, I would say, does all the magic, technical behind the scenes stuff, in our marketing. So I just know that isn't my strength, and this comes back for me to things like collaboration and working with people as well, because I think it isn't something that I don't want to sort of nod to now and again, because it's really it sort of energizes us, I think, doesn't it, that we found each other and we're working on something together. I don't think it's something to be taken lightly. Particularly when you're thinking about things like limitations. Sorry, everyone, I've got a bit of a frog in my throat. And then my other, so the other one is emotional, and I would say that my emotional limits are that I don't necessarily have any emotional limits. Like I feel strongly about things quickly, and I get moved very quickly. And the flip side of that is that I spend a lot of time thinking, and I think about what other people are thinking, and that drives my prioritization of things. I work towards myself and others feeling emotionally aligned, whereas for some people that's not a particularly relevant sort of priority. And some people would call this a strength, but sometimes I see it as a limit when I kind of just want to get stuff done. And then time limit, massive. I've got 2 little children, so as you've said, I don't really need to say any more about that one. Big time limit. And then in terms of interests, I think it's kind of connected to my other limitations. So, for example, on the marketing side, I'm not particularly interested in coding websites. I just want them to look pretty quickly. And I'm very interested in things looking very beautiful, sort of visually harmonious, but my interests are not in necessarily the building of them. So, we're just talking about some practical stuff here, but the emotional limitation thing is the big one. And if you can engage in those emotional limitations, I think firstly you can prioritize the kind of, we come to the niching bit here, you can actually use that stuff to serve your understanding of what your niche might be. But also the reason why we've put mindset so sort of high up as a priority and as the first step is that it very much kind of creates a safe space within which you can work moving forward. And our agenda is that you are able to have, everyone's able to have a sustainable business. So if we're kind of completely oblivious to a lot of what these values and limitations are, then, firstly, we're not going to be very clear about our message. But secondly, and more importantly, I'd say, we're not going to be very kind of kind to ourselves. So all of this is a bit farcical, because it might only last for a year and then we'll burn out. So, it's all really important to get sorted quite early.
Well, I think also, if we think to your point on the comparison trap, if you don't know, or you don't spend some time to understand what your limitations and values are, then you just end up building a product, a business, a marketing plan that's just like someone else's business. And if that person has spent a lot of time building a business that fits their values and around their limits, then you're just sort of trying to create someone else's business model and that may not serve you at all. Like that could really, do the opposite. It could feed all your limitations and give you none of your values. So you're just spending time working in a business that you just don't enjoy. And I think a lot of back when I was working a lot with entrepreneurs, I was amazed at the number of entrepreneurs who were building businesses to try and get VC funding and all this blah 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 that entrepreneurs chat on and on and on and on about. And then when you actually ask them whether they even want the funding, they're like, well, not really. And they're putting all this time and money into it, and you just think you're building a business to keep, I don't know, some blogger on Medium happy. Like whose business are you building? And one thing a business coach said to me years ago that has always stuck with me is, when you run your own business, you are the boss. So be a nice boss. You know what I mean? It's like you're in a very privileged position of being the boss of you at work. So don't build a business that doesn't serve you. You've got the luxury of being able to create a lifestyle, a business, or whatever you want to call it, that serves exactly your values and fits exactly around your limitations. So this is a great opportunity to define what those are so that you can then build the thing and then bring people to it with marketing.
I think what we're doing with marketing is saying, I'm really interested to know, by the way, if people can post in the chat who's done any psychometric testing and what that is, which ones they've done. Not because we're particularly wedded to anything at all. It's just really interesting, I think, sometimes to consider the range of sort of analysis out there about kind of who we are and what our approach to values and limitations and mindset is. I'm always really intrigued, and I'm really intrigued to know who actually uses their psychometric evaluations in their everyday life, because we can become quite conscious of these things and do a lot of work to become conscious of them and become experts in practicing psychometric and sort of personality evaluation tests and tools on people. But it's then a case of, what do we do with those things? What do we do with the knowledge of what we're actually all about? And what we're trying to help people with in terms of their marketing is, an opportunity to use some of these things that we're aware of in ourselves in a way that serves our business. So it's a true way of being able to say to the world, I'm like this, I like this, I work well with people like this, you're one of them, come with me. And the clearer we get on, sort of what we are, I think the better we can get about talking about why with us. Does that make sense? Is this of any interest?
Yeah, I did.
Here we go. Look, some people are
trying to think. Yeah,
psychometric testing models here. Clifton Strengths has been the most useful of psych assessment for me, says Joanna, and Rich MBTI GC Index Motivation Maps. Yeah, thanks. Rich once sent me kindly a kind of motivation map analysis tool. Neuroagility profile is one of my tools, about our brain architecture and things we can do to get the best out of our brains. I think about it most days, actually, without getting too hooked on stereotyping, though, because it's just a guide, of course. Good point, Lucy. Yeah. And Rich sort of mentions about how these are all tools for having conversations as well. I think it's about, if we're able to articulate clearly that we're mindful of and conscious of our strengths and limitations and own that stuff, then it's a really nice conversation starter as well, which is kind of what we're in the business of trying to get people to feel comfortable about and creative about. So I think you can see what we're doing here. We're saying, get to know yourself for your own sake, get to know yourself for clarity, get to know yourself for direction, but also get to know yourself because you're a coach or someone who's trying to help people, and getting to know yourself is a conversation that's really interesting to kind of have with people, and the questions that come up around all this stuff are useful. So we're constantly trying to double up on the effort, the effort to get to know yourself, but also the effort in putting yourself out there, and how can you serve yourself by not doing two lots of work once, but thinking about how one bit of work can work for the other bit, kind of thing.
Well, I think also sometimes when you think about the mindset and sort of thinking, okay, well, it's all very well knowing my values and it's all very well knowing my impact. And I think, as we've said previously, there's a lot of value to be had, or a lot of impact in just you knowing that. But then what we then do is turn that into, well, how do we then use what you want to do with your values, your value, and your impact, and what serves you, to then define the kind of client you want? How do we then write a story that helps articulate all of those in a way that your client can understand and resonate with? And then how do we turn that into a product that you actually want to sell, but crucially that your client wants to buy? Because your values need to come across in that product. It's all very well just copying someone else's coaching product, or just taking a textbook series of things that you've learned and you work with every day and then trying to sell that. But as we learn later down the line, you need to create and articulate it in a values-led way. And I think that's where these values extend to. They go right through the whole process, and then of course they get down to content and how you reflect that in your content. So although it does seem like quite a lot of work up front in terms of that sitting with it and reflecting and actually spending some time to work out, well, what is it you really want to do, then I think it's going to save you so much time, but also it's going to inform so much of the thinking throughout the other chapters of what we work on.
Almost to the point where in your elevator's pitch, you might like to bring in a value or a limit, because I think it's a really interesting differentiating factor when it comes to people understanding who you are quickly. I mean, we said that this session was also going to be about the value that we can have on other people's lives. And in order to know that for sure, we talk about ethical marketing, and what we mean by that it means many, many things to us. But one of the things is actually being true about what it is that you're selling. So, when you're thinking about what your value says, and you're working out who you are and what your approach to life is, you're getting clearer on the value that you then are going to serve to someone else. So it's one thing understanding all that stuff so that you can put together a compelling message, but it's another thing understanding all that stuff so that when you tell someone what it is you're going to be doing for them, you're actually sure that that is something that you have the skills to serve. There's no point me going around chatting to whoever about how I'm going to be the most amazing marketing mentor on everything to do with marketing and all the practicalities, because that isn't something I can say with conviction is 100% true. Like, whilst I have 20 years of experience in marketing, it's very different from your 20 years of experience in marketing. We both have very, very different skill sets. We're very clear on how what we do dovetails with the other really neatly, so that we have 40 years between us of sort of quite varied marketing experience. But we're also very different people. So the way that we work is very different. The way that we work in ourselves is very different. The way that we work with each other is very different, and how we work with other people is very different. But the clearer you get on all those things, the more you're able to say, I do this, here's how I work, here's how I can serve you. And I know that because I know what my limitations are. I'm really clear on what my limitations are, so I can say with confidence that this is the thing that actually I'm very good at. So I've got great practice at it. And I've embraced it because I'm never going to be amazing at the tech stuff, so I don't need to be. So, I do this stuff. So it's just getting clearer.
But I think also it's great to be able to, have some. I hasten to use the word confidence, but it is in a way a form of confidence to be able to say to someone, do you know what? I'm not the right fit for you. I totally hear what you're saying and what you need, but I'm not the right person for that. And by having a network of other people that you may be able to say, but actually I know just the person for you to speak to. And there's something I find very rewarding and empowering about being able to say, actually, that this is not for you, but this might be, and just being able to steer someone on that direction, because the amount of energy I instantly regain in myself, just from a selfish point of view, from not having to have a lengthy conversation about what I don't do, but knowing also you've not just left them high and dry, you've been able to sort of gently steer them off. And that's because I know the values that I want to work with and to serve more of. I know where my limitations lie, and I also know when we're just not going to be the right fit. It doesn't happen very often, thankfully, because I think we're quite good at signalling to whom we are the right fit, and we've spent quite a lot of time on that. That's good. Joanna says that she's been in that same situation. It does feel good.
It feels great.
And it was I was having a conversation with a community member, Pete, who also lives in the lovely Brighton. So we met up IRL for a coffee, and we were sort of chatting about that feeling of just being able to regain that energy for yourself, and just taking a quick moment to think, actually, that experience was energizing for me, and just recognizing that. But I think some of the signposts you can use to work out where and when that's appropriate are your values and your mindset.
Exactly. And I don't know if you saw, Simon, but Seth Godin's blog post, if it wasn't yesterday, it was like within the last week, because I had to digest them all rapidly last night, having not been able to read them every day. But he talks about, sort of money and pricing, and how we... would you want to earn money from helping someone cross the road? Or is the good feeling that you get from that something, would we want to earn money for everything that we do successfully? I think the answer is no, because, for example, in the situation that you've just described, in which Joanna says feels great, there's something about signposting and sort of serving someone in a way that isn't directly related to sort of what you might end up. It's all to do with karma. Always going to get this back to karma, aren't I? But, if you're able to be very clear, and you're able to kind of gently push someone in a different direction, you don't want to get paid for that necessarily, but you will be being paid for it in many ways. You'll be helping that other individual. You might be helping a fellow member of the kind of coaching community. But also you're helping yourself, because you're getting it clear quicker to avoid a situation that isn't going to work for you. So I love that. I love the clarity bit there.
Well, I think also something that's just popped into my mind. I was just thinking about Reb's comment earlier. It gives help and helps direct me, they said, and I think it's interesting there, because some of you may be lucky enough to know the wonderful Alan Wick, another sort of wise business sage. And he has a fantastic analogy that I will get out at any opportunity, and that is, if you're trying to get a lift from London to Glasgow, then don't accept a lift to Cornwall, because it's just going totally in the wrong direction. And once you understand what your values are and what your limitations are, it helps you choose where you get that lift to make sure you're going in the right direction. Because if you're, not only can you help other people go in the right direction, but you can help yourself. So it's, if your values are to build a coaching business that allows you to get to a certain point in your life or business, or wherever you want to be, however you want to feel from having that business running, if I come along and say, I'm going to offer you this money to be on a Channel 4 program about coaching, but it's going to be a bit against your values, it's going to take loads of your time, loads of your energy, and it's going to just take you in completely the opposite direction from where you want to go, do you want to do it? That decision is a lot quicker to make, because you can just take one look at it and say, does it align with my values? Is it like playing on my limitations? Does it help me get where I want to go? No, in which case you'll pass it by. Whereas if you don't have those values, if you're not as clear, then when those tempting lifts to Cornwall come up and you're trying to go north to Glasgow, you don't know. You'll just jump in any car as long as it looks nice and feels like it might take you somewhere.
You've made me think about this idea of like being 100% clear about where it is you're supposed to be going, and I also want to make sure that people are kind of clear from what we're saying, that we never expect for any of the stuff that we talk about to be, sort of it's certainly not necessarily clear in our minds all the time. So we're not sort of suggesting that you need to have a very clear picture of your values, your limits, and your niching audience now, and then you've got to stick to it for the rest of your life. It's just about practicing a kind of meditation on some of these things, uh, so that you kind of are sort of just aware, and sort of there's this thing of fluttering above what's happening in a way that sort of you can identify the bits that are energizing you, the bits that sort of are holding you back. So we're just trying to help people to kind of get into a mindset quite early on that they might like to just stop and think about where their values are and where their limits are in relation to what's happening, and then invite them to kind of change direction or just talk openly about those limitations, so that it's part of their practice.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for not being too beholden to the goal, but more to the feeling or the outcome or the situation or the idea, whatever that end thing looks like to you or feels like. For some people, their goal is just, I'd like to be able to read more, have more time to read. That could be the entire goal of your business, is just to be creating something that gives you more free time, which in which case is an absolutely valid place to go to and head towards.
Sorry, I'm just going to shut my windows because I think there's a lawnmower. You carry on.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, there's like a whole thing around that, and I think what you have to work out is that you can still have that feeling, that goal, that idea, but the journey that you go on in the middle, it's almost like you write the goal in pen and then you draw the journey in pencil. Because if you do that, you end up with a journey that you can adjust as you go. So whenever I used to do planning tasks with my old business coach, we used to write the goals at the end that we were aiming for in pen, and then all of the tasks week by week in pencil, because then you could rub them out and change them if you needed to. But the idea was that the goal at the end really was in shorter sprints you would work towards. So it's not like a goal for 20 years. It could just be, well, my goal for 6 months' time is to, attract 2 more clients that are like this. And that could be enough of a goal. It could be enough of a direction. It doesn't always have to be these huge, long-term, life-changing, like the sort of, chiseling it into stone and burying it in your back garden type, affirmations. It can be as simple as, do you know what? I would just like that next summer holiday I can take 3 weeks off, and I'm going to plan for that now. So I know that in next summer holidays I can have 3 weeks off straight and my business isn't going to be affected, and that's what I'm going to do. And that could be amazing. Imagine the impact that could have on your life, your family, your relationships, as a pure example I've pulled out the air. But that could be a good enough goal to work towards. So I think when we say goals, we're not necessarily talking about it from the strictly business or marketing sense of goal. It can be a lot more rewarding or serving, I guess, than it needs to be thought of than a business thing.
Yeah, and I think in all of this, we're hoping that people can change some of the statements that we hear often in relation to marketing. I can't do this, and I won't do this, and I should do this, and I need to do this. And we'd like to think that people are going to say more often at the end of this particular stage of our sort of process that they want to do this, they like doing this, they know that this is going to be fun, interesting, informative, useful, and that's based on what they've understood about what it is that they're trying to achieve or what works for them. So, to feel more empowered to feel those things about your marketing is kind of where we're looking to go with this, I think.
Yeah, very much. I mean, this is chapter 1, as you would imagine, is the getting you excited about the rest of the book chapter, isn't it? When you no sort of good novel or good book starts with a kind of starts with the middle, do you? You don't start with the middle. You don't get straight into the sort of the how-to. And I think that's why, just to leave your background to the beginning, that's why we start with the mindset, because as I say, from years of working with business owners who've come to me with my agency hat on, I get owners of fairly big companies, not massive, but big enough companies come to me and they're like, oh, I've been told I need to do some marketing. Those people never do good marketing because they never like anything. They never, website's always wrong. They don't want to send emails. They don't want to do any of it because they've been told they want to do it. Whereas people who come to us and say, I'm really excited about this new idea I've got. I really want to take this idea out to the world. Can you help? Then those are the businesses that we really want to work with because their mindset's right. And I think that's where we are here, is because you are, boss, HR, accounting, head of delivery, head of operations, the chief financial officer, you're everything in your business, predominantly most people are, then it's hard sometimes because you're being pulled in all these different directions. So I think the mindset just focuses you right back to the middle. And it's, as an old coach used to say to me, it's working on the business, not in the business.
Exactly, and it's
just
not
taking that time out.
It's not just the business of marketing, is it? It's the whole coaching business. So you're going to create a more sort of spacious and enjoyable coaching business if you're sort of buying yourself more headspace. Allowing you to kind of breathe in your practice a bit better. What we're setting up for people is the space now to create the frame in which to do all the marketing things from a place of confidence, so that when you sort of you come to the end, or not the end, but to the last chapter of what we have as a framework for you, then you'll have hopefully removed a lot of the worry about what doing marketing is, and that will, we really hope, inform the energy and sort of the practical nature in which you're able to actually conduct a coaching business. And pricing will come into all of this as well, because the more confident you are, the more able you are to kind of price with conviction, charge your worth and ask people to pay you what it is that you're going to be serving to them, because you'll be all the more confident about what that actually is.
Yeah, exactly. And Joanna has just given us an absolutely fantastic summary, which is thank you for that, Joanna. Joanna says, it feels like it's about getting real with ourselves, burning off what's dead, artificial, inherited expectations, to get out what brings us alive.
To get
beneath
to what
that,
brings
sorry.
us alive beneath that, yeah.
Then stay and get clarity on that before going out with it.
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
a really nice way of putting it, Joanna. Sorry I butchered it with my reading.
Right.
I was leaning in to read it and then conscious I was getting very close to my mic, which may have made it very loud. So apologies, that was all sides of my brain working at once there. But I think really what we're saying is, just to sort of bring the conversation round to a close, is, the first chapter in our in our 6 chapters is to work on yourself so that you can then feel more confident about putting yourself out there. We are going to be launching this course in a couple of weeks' time, in early September. If you are in the community, we will be letting you know all about it when it's coming and how you can get involved in that course when it launches. If you are not a member of the community and you think you'd like to know more about it, then you can join our mailing list using the link that is magically appearing in the chat now. Just pop your email in there and we'll be sending out an email to everybody on the mailing list as soon as that course is available, telling you more about what's involved, how you can sign up, and hopefully answering a few questions you may have. Do feel free to connect with us on social, on Instagram or on LinkedIn. Feel free to give us any questions on there. We'd love to connect with you there. I think, though, the other thing that would be great is if you are listening to this and you're thinking another coach and you think this might be right up their street, or that you don't want them to miss out on this session, you can watch this whole video on a replay. Just by simply sending them this link, they can watch the whole video on a replay. So we'd love it if you knew anybody who you think might resonate with this or has something exciting to add to this conversation, then please do send them this link. And if you're watching on the replay, hello to everyone watching on the replay. Frances, did you have anything you'd like to close off with?
No, thank you. On the contrary, I'm thinking how, we've got such an amazing audience of incredibly insightful, self-aware coaches, and they've been very self-contained on the chat. We've had some really amazing comments, but I'm sure that people will have loads more to say on this subject. So all the more reason to kind of share the session, and perhaps you can use it in your own social media marketing. You could put a link to the session and invite your network to listen in again, and then sort of let what they think about it. So feel free to capitalise on our content and repurpose it for your own benefit. If anyone had any sort of final thoughts in the last couple of minutes, or a word or a feeling, or sort of a mindset shift that they might like to share, feel free. I've certainly found it very energising. I often don't quite know where I'm at in my mind until I get chatting with Simon and with other members of our community. So, it's certainly great to kind of watch mindset unfold on a daily basis and know that it's an ever-changing, beautiful beast. So, thank you, everyone. Oh, empowering. Thanks, Lucy. Thanks so much, Sal. You've all got loads to add on this, so looking forward to chatting to you guys in the community. And if anyone isn't in the community, please do join us. It would be fantastic to have you there.
That's really good, Reb. Thanks very much for your comment there. I'm really glad you found it useful, and thank you very much for joining us. Yes, you will get a quick reminder from Crowdcast about the next session, so do feel free to save your spot on those sessions now if you want to hear the next 5 chapters. And even if you can't make it, then don't worry. Just by saving your spot, Crowdcast will automatically send you a copy of the replay, so you can enjoy it in your own time, at your own leisure. But if you'd like to join us live for the conversation, then do tune in when we go live. So thank you, everybody, for listening and watching, and we will see you in the next chapter.
Which is Client. Follows up very nicely. Take care.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.